we need to have a clear objective that we are evolving towards. And of course, that is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is known as believing and having faith that we have to get to our destination. That is not enough. We have to then reinforce that decision by outward bodily actions that are known as righteous deeds. Righteous deeds are committing good works and interacting with them in a befitting manner. And that level needs to be sustained in order for the objective to be attained. We stated here that we need utmost consistency and resolve. So the outward bodily manifestation of commitment towards the attainment of the goal keeps us moving. But we stated that the motion in this respect is the inner motion, motion of the heart and of the soul towards Allah the Beloved, the objective. And God is not to be met with on the day of Qiyamah. Rather, attaining the objective here is not reaching a place, it is in fact becoming the destiny from within ourselves. In other words, evolving into godliness or allowing the emergence of godliness through us. For this now, we need a vital component known as intention. That in every act of ours and our pauses, our thoughts, we need to intend God through it all, so that our bodily commitment is meaningful through inner association and activity. You see, when we say we want to arrive at God, this notion is very ambiguous because arrival at God could mean getting into paradise, or it could mean being saved from hell, or it could mean that God becomes that point of response for us in our times of need. In order to refine this motion towards God, we need to have an accurate intention of committing ourselves to God for the sake of God and not for the sake of anything else. And that is known as the inner activity of intention. The Blessed Prophet has stated that your actions are in accordance or your deeds are in accordance with your intentions. The quality of a deed is determined by the purity of the intention through which it is committed. It is stated furthermore that a good deed without a good intention is useless, whereas a good intention without an accompanying deed is good in itself. Combination of both is the ideal requirement. In that way, if we were to analyze it further, when we have a good intention, it allows for the inner being to move towards God. On the other hand, if we were to commit a good act unaccompanied by a wholesome intention, in this journey, it is seen like a dead body without a soul or a spirit. It's like people who pray for the sake of praying robotically, but their prayers do not yield in a substantive manner. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states in the Quran, He says, and when you have finished performing your obligations and rituals at Hajj, then slaughter the camel. But he states that neither does the blood nor the flesh of that camel come to me. What comes to me is the piety that is within your souls. What is reaching out to God is what is within us. The act is a mere means to bring the inner being in line with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the act is a bodily expression to discipline the animal. The intention is the inner awakening of the human who is constantly directed towards God. Now, in this respect, the masters say that if the intention from performance of righteous deeds, whether they be in the form of prayers and fast and hajj, or it be in the form of giving charity or helping others, if the intention is to reach paradise, then the human being has become shortchanged because the intention ought to be God for the sake of God. If the intention is to be saved from a pitiful end, then that too is a human being deceiving his own self. Bring to mind that story of Isa salamullah alayh. He passed by a group of people who had become very thin, reduced to mere bones and flesh. And Isa asked them, well, what has brought you to this state? They said, oh, Isa, the fear of God's chastisement. The Spirit of God responded, he said, in that case, Allah will never punish you. He went on and he found another group of people that were radiating. And he said, what has brought you to this fine state? They said, the love of paradise. Isa said, indeed, Allah will bless you with paradise. He came to a third group of people that were filled with serenity and luminous faces. He smiled and he said, what has brought you to this state? They said, Isa, it is the love of God that has brought us to this state. He said, by God, you are the forerunners, the most successful of all. So the intention of this life and every aspect of this life ought to be God for the sake of God. Now we read to this effect in the hadith of Mi'raj, in which the Blessed Prophet is told that, O Muhammad, when a sincere soul is taken away from the world, it is brought to me. And I ask it, O soul, inform me of the events of the world and their state. The soul trembles and says, O God, ever since I have recognized you, I have become oblivious to other than you. I tremble in the awe of your majesty and melt away in beholding your splendor. God says, I reply to the soul that I take an oath by my majesty and my glory that you have spoken the truth. And I shall keep you in a place where there shall be no veil between you and me. The spiritual masters at this point comment that this veil is the veil of paradise, that paradise in itself is a veil. Can you imagine if the author of paradise can be gained by gaining paradise? We have actually lost out on everything. How wonderfully Hussein Salamullah alayh displays this sentiment in his dua where he says, O Allah, if I have you, then I have not lost anything. If I don't have you, I have lost everything. If we work into this equation, if we work into this particular formula that Hussein is given, Salamullah alayh, then it means having paradise without the recognition of God as he could have been recognized is being cheated from what we were owed. Imam Ali Salamullah alayhi says in some place that there are angels who are immersed in the devotion to God. They are so fully devoting themselves to God that they are satisfied in their hearts that they are worshipping God and they know God. The Imam says, if God were to impart a ray of his true nature upon the souls of those blessed angels, they would die of regret at not having worshipped God at all. Intention, therefore, is that these commitment that I have and the actions that display my commitment are in order for me to move towards God. And this motion towards God is, in other words, an inner motion of the soul where it lets go of itself by not intending any gain for itself or dispelling any loss from itself. But this motion is for God as God is. And therefore, even to say that I am moving towards God because I want to be with God in itself, according to our masters, is a veil. O Lord, allow me to yearn you in a way that befits your holiness, that I do not have the intention that I want to reach with you. The only intention is that may the kingdom of the slave perish, and may the beloved reign gloriously upon his seat and upon his throne, which is my soul. O Allah, my intention is I give myself over to you, for you to display your beauty and for me to fade away. That ought to be the intention when we are traveling towards God. Now, if that's the case, then we come to that beautiful sentiment that Hussein Salamullah alayhi displays. At some point, when he is losing his children and his brothers, we see this sentiment so truly depicted in his serenity and in his surrender to God. This sentiment he displays in his Dua Arafah prior to Karbala, but in physical terms, we see it in Karbala on the day of Ashura. That Hussein says to Allah, "O Allah, allow me not to yearn from you the hastening of a decree that you have chosen to postpone. O Lord, if you have postponed victory from me, then do not allow my heart to yearn you for the sake of you hastening your decree of giving me victory over my enemies. If you have decreed that I be sliced and shredded by the blade, then allow me not to want anything other than what you have decreed. O Lord, allow me not to yearn the postponement or the delay of a decree that you have chosen to hasten, O Allah. If you have chosen to take Akbar away from me, or Asgar, or Abbas, Salamullah alayhim ajma'in, then allow me not to plead to you, to say, O Allah, give them back to me for another moment. Let my surrender to you be for you yourself, not for anything that you can do for me. Such is the state of a wholesome intention that when we wholesomely yearn God, then everything fades away. By everything fading away means that we fade away because inevitably we are the point of restriction and we are the obstacle that prevents us from arriving at our goal. If the intention is fine tuned that I want God, everything fades away because I fade away. As I fade away, the brilliance of his splendor begins to emerge in what I used to call myself until nothing but the beloved is observed. On that note of intention, though, we are very much mistaken into thinking that this world is something that controls us, that we are beholden to this world. No, this world is not of matter as we imagine it to be, it's the world of mind. Matter is illusory, it's an illusion. We have conjured up this notion of matter and world. It is full of mind and thoughts. If I can take this with a little example, think about this carefully, although it's a mundane example, as a prelude into this little thing that I want to say, that we will never alleviate poverty from the world by increasing charity. The only time we will rid our world of poverty is when we convince the minds that poverty is a sickness, and it's a sickness upon humanity, and each one of us are being made unwell due to this sickness. As soon as the mind is convinced, poverty is removed from the face of the earth. Similarly, oppression, injustice, transgression, not giving the rights of others to them, arrogance, all of these things can only be removed when the minds begin to think differently. On that note, the way we think about the world causes the great mind of the world to respond to us and to think in accordance with that. There is a lot of anger. There is a lot of discontentment in our minds. There is a lot of disheveled state from within. There is a lot of turbulence inside the souls. This is being projected outwardly, and hence our world is engulfed in wars, in tribulations, in troubles, in injustices, in poverty, in sickness, because we, at the level of our intentions and thinking, are negative people. If the people of this world are able to think positively and intend righteous intentions, then the world will be cured in an instant. It does not require us to take up arms and struggle in the way of God to establish justice. It only takes us to neutralize this negativity within us. When we intend good, the earth reciprocates in a befitting and equal manner. So it's not the case that we are passive recipients of destiny. Actually, the case is that we are the creators of destiny, but we have not evolved to that level of fine spiritual existence and understanding. But that's where we need to be. If we think not only positively, but in a godly way, then it's phenomenal. You see, earthquakes will always happen, but the concept of suffering and tragedy and negativity is something that we create from within. We can choose to look at things slightly differently and rid ourselves of this negativity. And then the world as well will reciprocate by protecting us. Similarly, when we intend good towards others, they naturally feel good towards us. When we think in a negative way about others and we hate others from the heart, even without realizing in their minds, their hearts will hate us. I used to have a very spiritual friend, and one morning he came to me and said, if you had a problem with me, you should have just called me and told me. I said, I would have accepted that it was my fault. You needn't have felt the things that you felt, because whatever you were feeling, I was receiving it in my heart, and it wasn't feeling right. Next time, if you feel offended at something I have said, pick up the phone, tell me. I will accept it and I will apologize to you. But don't feel bad towards me. This is what happens. Intentions determine the world and everything around us. It is so effective, not only in our journey to God, but in the entirety of our existence. If we can think good about people, whether they hate us or not, they will begin to love us. But that should not be the intention. The intention should be good for the sake of it. Obviously, my time has finished. I'll end on this dua of the fourth Imam, Salamullah alayhi, in which says, Oh Allah, the people who hate me, cause them to love me. The people who envy me, give them enough so that they are relieved of their envy. O Allah, in place of bad feelings, bring about good feelings. And the verse of the Quran, it says, remember when you were enemies, fighting with each other, it was Allah who brought love in your hearts. And through the grace of God, you became brothers and brethren in faith. So intentions are, in the scheme of wayfaring, a vital component so that the external manifestations of the bodily actions of doing good are directed properly inwardly, and the inner self begins to blossom and bloom and begins to receive the munificence and the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'll end there. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.